Fantastic. So, Claire, I'll turn over to you and we'll see how we go. I'll continue
Okay.
to let people in.
Okay. Thank you, Kate. Oh, well, thank you everyone for joining us for this session. Um, it's funny, Kate asked me last month to speak on this topic, and you don't realize until you've actually start putting things down on paper, just the experience that you've had. I started working with people with strokes. Oh, I was trying to work it out. It was certainly about the mid 90s. And I was I've been working or volunteering at a nursing home because we were realizing that you could use brain gym with all ages, and I had come from a teaching background, so I wanted some experience with elderly people. So I had an opportunity with another friend of mine who was a brain gym instructor, and we started volunteering at this nursing home. And this is where we discovered there was a whole different side of brain gym to do with aging, to helping people that are having difficulty, strokes. We could do something. I then put together my brain gym for aged care workshop and taught it all around Australia and overseas as well. And it was from one of those workshops I did in Melbourne. I had the diversional therapist contact me and asked me if I would go to work in the nursing home in Melbourne with a lady. One of her patients, Dorothy, had had a stroke 6 years earlier, and she'd never regained speech. And her sister had been over from Germany, and the diversional therapist was telling her about this workshop she'd done with me, and the sister knew all about brain gym. And they said, well, contact Claire and see if she'll come in. So I did. And so it was the start of me working with strokes in nursing homes. Dorothy, incidentally, after about, I think it was about 3 sessions, we started getting various words out of her. Took about 6 sessions before she really had competent speech back again, but she wouldn't believe us that we could hear her. So we ended up taping her. So I'd do things like one, two, I'd say one, two, she'd say three, but still, until she heard the tape replayed, she she was shocked actually to think that people could hear her again. But it was when I was working with her, the staff asked me if I'd look at this guy, work with a guy, Vince, in the same nursing home. And Vince had had a stroke 8 years earlier. He literally lay in his bed all day, every day, no movement, no eye contact, no sound at all. His wife came in for at least 8 hours every day and sat beside him and talked to him, and they were desperate for some help. So that first day when they asked me, I was due at another nursing home after lunch, so I really didn't have time. So I just gave them some quick brain gym to do. The buttons, earth buttons, space buttons. I think it was thinking caps, energy yawn. I've got it in the handout anyway, what I gave him. Anyway, so I promised them the next time I was there, I'd come back and have some extra time to work with him. I came back and the nursing home was buzzing. Vince, after I left, or over the time, Vince started making eye contact with people. And someone had come into his room and he would actually look at them and follow with his eyes. He was starting to look at his wife again and starting to make noises. The wife had worked out if it was a yes noise or a no noise. So they were beginning to be able to ask him questions. So there was a bit of communication going on. So we're all thrilled with these results. So I decided I'd do a proper balance on him. So went away, came back 2 weeks later, went into Vince's room. Nobody's there. So, of course, in a nursing home, your first reaction is they may have passed on. So I found the staff very quickly and asked where was he, what had happened. And they sort of sheepishly told me that after I left, Vince decided he'd get out of bed. Now, this is a man who hadn't moved for 8 years. No one else was around, and he fell out of bed and unfortunately broke his nose. So I was impressed I had such good results, but I was devastated this man had got injured. They then brought in rules in the nursing home. If I balanced them, they had to have the rails up for a while to find out, to see what was going to happen. But anyway, I that was sort of then I got to work with other clients in other nursing homes and certainly in my private practice. I go mobile as well. I visit people in their homes and they come to me as well. So obviously the ones that come to me are mobile and a little bit more capable. Now it's going to play up.
Excuse me, Claire. Catherine, I
Yes.
think we've now got 45 participants, 44 participants, and I think that's it. So
Now after all this, why is this not working? My clicker. Okay, what do I do?
I'm unsure. Just let me
I am frozen. Why am I frozen?
I don't know is the short answer.
Just a sec.
Is it in PowerPoint, Claire? Because it freezes just for a little minute. Just keep pressing it. It just
Keep
takes a
pressing it.
moment.
All the times it's been clicking off or clicking on when I didn't want it to do it. Everything's on. I've got new batteries in. Come on. Oh, you're joking.
Is it my go-to is to go out and come in again?
Okay, here we go. I apologise, everyone. We had it all working.
Yes, it's
Okay.
the low-tech twins. Okay, so come in again.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go. So here we go. So a stroke happens when blood carrying oxygen can't get to the part of the brain. We know brain cells get damaged and can die if left without oxygen, even for a few minutes. So a stroke can affect several parts of the body. A stroke can affect depending on which part of the brain it affects. And some effects can last long after the event. And these are areas that people complain about. They have problems after a stroke. Thinking and memory, they have problems with emotional regulation, less emotional control, speech, nerves with their visual system, poor hand-eye coordination, eating, swallowing, body temperature control, fatigue, low endurance, movement sensation, difficulty making decisions, changes in personality or behaviour, breathing, and incontinence. Well, us brain gym people can see that there's a lot of areas there that brain gym certainly deals with. They now know with neuroplasticity, it works extremely well with stroke rehabilitation. So neuroplasticity allows the brain to form new neural connections and rewire itself to compensate and heal for losses from the damage. The brain also shifts responsibility for a given task from one region to another region, given the right stimulation, such as brain gym. And there are certain signs to indicate that they are recovering. And one of them is needing more sleep. And I used to see this a lot after I balanced people, even with acquired brain injury. I worked with Parkinson's, MS, and they all, particularly the ladies, would say they needed a good night sleep. But certainly after you balance someone with a stroke, they do tell you that for the next 24 hours, they have a good sleep or need extra sleep. They'll be taking a few naps. Brain gym balancing. Well, strokes really shut down brain integration, with many experiencing difficulties with cognition, thinking, reasoning, awareness, memory. Doing a brain gym balance, how doesn't matter how simple it is, can assist in positive brain integration by relieving stress and anxiety, promoting more efficient neural connections, allowing other parts of the brain to take over those damaged functions and switch on affected areas, no matter how long ago they had a stroke or other areas taking over. My advice is you keep the balance as simple as possible. So what we're going to be looking at, when working with strokes, it's highly recommended that you use your noticing skills diligently, keep in their comfort zone, use self-testing, use verbal questioning. I find priority goal and the priority retained reflex. Find the emotion and use passive versions of the brain gym movement. So we'll look at as many of the passive versions that I use when working with strokes. So using your noticing skills diligently, begin gently, because especially if you're dealing with someone like Vince, who you could get no feedback at all, or it just may be really limited. So do your best to notice what's happening with the client, where they're having concerns and difficulties. Listen to feedback from the people around them. Often the family, especially the wife, usually the daughters, will give me wonderful feedback. Aged care workers, those working there, will tell you what's going on. Other therapists, and adjust the balance accordingly. One thing I can say with stroke rehabilitation and balancing, expect the unexpected. You're going to have to be very flexible and adaptable in your thinking and how you do your brain gym. I always suggest keeping in their comfort zone, especially in the early days. Having a stroke is extremely traumatic for the brain and the body. So attempting to go out of their comfort zone initially will only add to their trauma. Less is more in the initial sessions. So just find out what they can do and just start to get the system going again very carefully, very easily. And they're probably not used to brain gym, so you just work in their comfort zone. Self-testing. Now, this is vital, especially when you're balancing for things like a stroke, acquired brain injury, because often there's no way you can test them. You could possibly, if you know how to do surrogacy balances and you've got someone there with you, you can do that. But I have found that with me doing the balance for them, so I'm going to do a balance for them, but I'm not going to take on the surrogacy because I need to stay completely alert to what's going on and what needs to be done. So I often do balances for them. So if I'm doing a distance balance, I will do the balance for them. So I get permission through self-testing. Now, whether you do the whole self response, the standing up, going back for low gear, coming forward for high gear, or there's many, many other self-testing ways. A common one is thumb and finger together, and that's a high gear, that's a low gear. But this is invaluable when you're working with strokes, especially the severe strokes. So you're needing to ask questions about this person. So when I'm with them, even if I'm just finding the brain gym that's going to be the most relevant for them, I will self-test for priority brain gym, the learning menu. So even if I'm working in a class at school and I've only got, say, 15, 20 minutes, I'll just do quickly self-test which brain gym is priority for that class. So it's something I use many, many times. So a lot of them you won't be able to actually do a lot of the physical testing. So you will need verbal testing. So you will need the self-testing for verbal questioning. Is this person in pace? Is this person fully hydrated? Or you can tug on the hair and just see what you're getting. What's their priority emotion? So a lot of the time I am just quietly asking questions to know where I'm going with the balance and with the brain gym. You probably need, so you won't be able to do robot swimmers and penguins with the more severe strokes. So you'll probably need to ask if their system is fully balanced for laterality, for centering, for focus, and see what you get there. For the ones that come into my clinic, usually we can manage a bit of robots, penguins, swimmers. If not, I use that, or I use a combination of the verbal questioning with robot swimmers, penguins. In initial balances, I rarely include any in-depth checks. This will be going on for about 6, 8 balances before I even start looking at in-depth checks. I just need to get their system moving along. But always, depending on the circumstances, you're judging the whole time just how far you can go. Now this is optional, and I did debate whether I was going to put this in. Something I do all the time. I find their priority goal. I probably wouldn't do it for the first few sessions if it was a severe stroke, but then I always include it. I include it in almost every balance I do. So they usually normal balance, they will give you the goal. But I used to always think, but what is it their body really, really, or their brain really, really wants to balance for? What is really going on behind the scenes? So I decided one day I would ask my clients, did they have a priority goal? Yes. And initially I used the gathering issues. And gradually I realized, hey, yes, there was a lot in this. Many times the priority goal would override what the person came in for, and the whole session to be about that. I have never done a priority goal with anyone, and they've turned to me and said, we don't know what this is all about. They've all gone, yes. Now, I have found out some fairly serious things at times using these, but I always check to see what's going on behind the scenes. The books I use, I've got a picture up there of one I use, the Rekindled Ancient Wisdom Affirmations. Each book's got over 5,500 affirmations. There's 7 in the series. So books 4 and 7 also focus on emotions. Book 2 is a physical book. Book 3 is just many different looking at programs that hold you back. Book 4 is all emotions. Book 5 is sabotage. And book 6 is fear. A lot of our balances are around fear and fear paralysis reflex. You can often find the hidden fear with these. They are excellent. I use them also for finding priority emotion. But if you want more information on this, I could almost do a whole session on this, but it is optional. But if you want to just ask, is there a priority goal that this system needs to balance for this session? Remember, I'm self-testing, usually with strokes. So I would find the goal. Another one that's optional, if you're trained in this, feel comfortable in this, is finding the priority retained reflex. So many early uterine and early primitive reflexes will probably have been reactivated during the stroke. So they've gone into survival. So if you can include some simple reflex balancing, this is often the block to healing. So verbally question to establish if there is a active reflex, where is it in development? So I would ask, for this person, are they fully balanced? We'll say Moro reflex, fully balanced for the Moro reflex. And if it says no, well, I'll find out where it is on that graph there. So I've got some indication where we're starting and where we'll end up. So I'll ask, is this system got a fully emerged, we'll say Moro reflex, has it fully developed, is it fully integrated? And initially I wouldn't even bother putting any of the actual physical reflex tests in. That can come later. Expect with stroke rehabilitation, expect to balance, well, I balance early uterine reflexes, which fear paralysis is one of them, and the Morrow reflex. So, and there's this overlap, as you can see, between the two where they can swing between the early uterine Morrow or have them both on together. So don't be surprised if you need to balance the same retained reflex a number of times, particularly the early ones after someone has had a stroke. Every time you balance them, you'll be balancing at a higher level. So just go with whatever their system is telling you through self-testing if you need to. I always find finding priority emotion. If nothing else, that's the important one to go to. So we've got our educate gathering issues there. There's other ways of finding emotions in kinesiology. You might like to get book 4 of those raw books where they list all the emotions and statements. I find them invaluable. Again, people never say to me, "Oh, no, that doesn't apply to me." They always go, "Yep. That's exactly. It says it in much better words than what I did. What the emotion is. Okay. So passive versions of brain gym. It was very obvious to me very, very quickly that the normal official versions weren't going to work. So you'll often need to do passive versions where the person is doing it for you, on you. So many require no active participation from the client, yet are just as effective. Gradually move onto active versions. They're still simplified, but it's getting the person to put a bit of involvement in themselves. I'm continually monitoring and modifying the brain gym movements to suit whatever client's specific situation I am working with. So let's have a look at some of these passive versions. Well, definitely water is a key factor in stroke rehabilitation. We know a stroke-affected person needs a hydrated brain more than ever. We know under stress, a stressed central nervous system, including the brain, needs at least 2 to 3 times more water than usual just to survive. So drinking small sips of plain water continually during the day will keep the brain sufficiently hydrated. Water will activate the neural pathways made by doing any of the brain gym movements. And there's often they look at me as if to say, "You've got to be joking." They don't drink water. And to actually, usually I'd give it no more than half full, but I discovered giving them water in shot glasses.
Cheers.
Was a fun way to encourage the person to drink, especially the elderly people. And don't think I'm always balancing for elderly people in
Jokes.
with strokes. I've worked with a 5-year-old girl that's had a stroke, and I've worked with a 26-year-old, and I've certainly seen spattering ones in their 30s and 40s. So it's not always the old ones, but these ladies here were quite amused to get there. They would drink the water if they're in their shot glasses. So brain buttons. Well, we know the brain buttons are 2 acupressure points directly above the carotid arteries. Rubbing these points send fresh oxygenated blood to the brain to wake up the brain, to improve brain functioning, concentration, and memory, as well as encouraging both brain hemispheres to crosstalk, to connect with each other. It is, apart from the water, this one is so important. So we need increased oxygenated blood to the brain to improve communication between those hemispheres, which are critical in lost brain function. Because we know when the brain has a stroke, it goes in a very homolateral state. This is a very gentle, easy way of getting the brain, started to get the brain switched back on again. It also may be pivotal to begin improving eye function if that's been affected as well. So you can see there, lady there, we were helping her do her brain buttons. That was Jean. Jean was a wanderer when we first came to the nursing home. How she got through security, nobody knew. And so we started doing brain gym with her. And by the second week we'd been there, she never wandered off again. She knew she was living in the nursing home now, and that's where she was. So she accepted present circumstances. But Jean was always keen to be in our brain gym classes. So, as I said, brain strokes really put the brain and body in a homolateral, non-communicative state. Instead of that superhighway across it between both sides of the brain through the corpus callosum, they've now got a brick wall, and they go in very unintegrated homolateral behaviours. And if they've been someone who's been fairly switched on, had good brain integration all their life, this can be quite traumatic for them. So we need a brain gym that's going to really get in and start rewiring the brain. So doing any version of cross crawl, however simple it is vital, as cross crawl will assist in the formation of new neural pathways. It will get a different area to perform the functions previously done by the area of lost brain tissue. It will need to be built up over time, and just take it slowly for them. So I've got a bit here, what we would do. As I said, this is very similar to what I would do with any acquired brain injury I work with. So first of all, you're asking about any restrictions. What can they do? What can't they move? Always sitting or lying down to do their brain gym initially. We don't want them losing their balance, falling over, and a lot of them can't do it standing anyway at this point. But for safety's sake, always sitting or lying down. Check the movement ability, the range in arms, fingers, legs, toes. You may just be working with opposite finger and opposite toe initially. Well, if that's where we start, that's where you start, whatever's available. So first of all, we just begin with moving something on the opposite side. If they're happy for a hand to be raised up, a left foot to be moved, well, so be it. So you've just got to gauge where you can start with them. I'm not going to cross the midline. I'm just going to move body, top half, bottom half at the same time if possible. Usually assistance will be required, and just build up slowly. Then we start getting them to join in again without crossing over that midline. And then if we can lift opposite arm and leg or do something, just keep building up, involve a bit more body involvement. Then we would start to cross the midline. So I would just have an arm going across. One of the ladies I visited had a stroke. But she was back at home. She had a lot of care, but she was back at home. And she spoke to me quite competently. You wouldn't have known anything unless you knew the story. But I said to her, "Can you touch your opposite leg?" And she just looks at me and goes, "No." I said, "You can't even do that." So no, she could get about this far to the midline and then she would stop. There was just no way she seemed to get across. So I actually did a balance on her to be able to cross over. So I left her that week to do some brain buttons, and I think the carer was helping her, and start attempting to just get the arm moving across the midline. I came back. She was able to cross that midline, and we got the legs. I was starting to move the opposite leg as well. By the time I came back for the third visit, she got up and she walked a few steps for us and told me she was so happy to be running around the house again. So you just don't know where the improvements are going to be or how quickly it's going to happen. Certainly with this lady, it moved fairly quickly. So once I've got them cross-crawling, I'm not saying fast, I'm not saying too competently. I start throwing in some things, some aspects of a repatterning. So look up. Can they look up and cross crawl? If they can't, that's fine. We'll work on that. Humming. If they cannot hum, when I was working with Dorothy, because she couldn't make the sound, we would hum for her. And that's fine. Part of their brain will register the hum. Even when I work with deaf people, I tell them to hum. Well, usually the person sign languaging will tell them to hum. They look at me strange, but we will always hum for them at the same time because part of their brain will register that hum. And we know humming relaxes the system, helps balance the vagus nerve. In fact, when I'm offering my home support brain gym, I always ask now the brain gym they've selected, do they need to hum at the same time? So I know humming is quite important, but especially with stroke rehabilitation. If they can't look up, I will find something they're attracted to gain their visual attention. It might be a photo. I've got a lot of little objects on pop sticks. They usually choose one and we use that. So it's something they're attracted to, not necessarily me. So I just gradually build them up and just it takes time, but it's well worth it to just keep on with this cross crawl. Now, if cross crawl just isn't available, you can tracking with the eyes. Why is it a suitable substitute? Well, as a baby's eyes first start to form at the beginning of 6 weeks of pregnancy, they're actually outgrowths from the developing brain. And as the structures enlarge, they remain connected to the brain by a stalk that will eventually house the main optic nerve. So nowhere else in the body do we have greater influence on the brain than through the eyes. So tracking, looking side to side. And if they can do it with brain buttons, it's even better. But I'll guarantee you people with strokes will have a lot of problems looking side to side. So what do you do? Well, again, get something that they will look at. If I'm in the nursing home, I usually look around their room and they might have a photo there of their daughter or grandson or family, and I'll see if they'll follow that. A favorite animal. Sometimes you go in there and you know someone likes dogs, cats from all their ornaments and pictures in their room. Flowers in particular. I had a Spanish lady who every time you spoke of Spain, she just went to tears. So I went and got one of those calendars and took it into her and I was showing her and I found her favorite one and that was the one we used for tracking. The reason George Clooney is up there is I had a group, I was working in a high care dementia unit, and we were trying to get these ladies in their 80s. They couldn't cross crawl to track because I wanted to start getting the eyes and brain switched on. We couldn't work out what on earth they were attracted to. And I happened to be staying for lunch that day, and we were talking about TV shows and movie stars, and someone mentioned George Clooney. Well, did we get a bit of a reaction from these ladies? So one of the staff members knew where there was a picture of him in one of the magazines. So she ripped it out and we walked across the room holding on to George Clooney. And I'll tell you what, these ladies didn't take their eyes off him. Now, the interesting things with tracking is the connections from eye movements come from the frontal lobes of the brain. So we know people have had strokes, not only left and right, stop talking, but certainly the frontal lobe shut down. So this is excellent, tracking's an excellent brain gym to get left and right talking and the frontal lobes. Anyone that's in a panic attack, anxiety, now they get themselves so stewed up, get them to look side to side. And it doesn't even matter if their eyes are open or not. It's the eye movement that's it gets them out of survival and starts to activate the frontal lobes again. I've actually got a copy of this research. This was what was in the Herald's on the paper. But scientists have now got the proof. They believe moving your eyes side to side forces the two sides of the brain to communicate, improving its capability to retrieve facts, memory. The connections for eye movements come from these frontal lobes. So it is so important for eye movement. Put brain gym with it and you'll get even better results. Even if they're just holding those spots, that is fine. That will still work. Hookups is a major brain gym when working with strokes. We know hookups reduce stress, reactivate the frontal lobes, which get shut down after a stroke, and improves cognitive functioning because your executive functioning comes from your frontal lobes. So use any simplified version that the client can easily manage. Part 1 is the one that's going to reduce those stress hormones in the system and get the frontal lobes on. But it can be one of the more difficult exercises to place your client in. Any effort is worth it, whether they're crossing like this, boys, even ADHD boys, like under the armpit, crossing in front, even crossing your arms like this and crossing the ankles. I know I was in a working with acquired brain injury people and they were just crossing their thumbs. That's all we could manage them to do, but we were still getting excellent results. So whatever you can do with first part of hookups is well worth having a go. Part 2, where we touch fingertips. We know this balances and connects energy between the two hemispheres of the brain. When I'm doing presentations and I'm waiting on the side, you often see the male speakers standing there waiting like this. And I think, do they even realize they're balancing the left and right side of their brain by doing this? It can be an easier one for someone who's had a stroke, just to be able to put fingertips together, even if they can manage a couple to start. It's well worth the effort. So hookups is definitely on the list for brain rehabilitation. But if that's not possible, you've always got positive points, emotional stress release. It's an easier brain gym to do with those that have had strokes. Helps in reducing the emotional trauma of a stroke. Expect to do positive points a great deal in initial sessions to reduce the trauma, including anxiety and depression. And that is a big problem with people that have had strokes. As you can imagine, their body is nowhere near what it used to be. Their lives are completely changed. And generally, they're not too happy about it. Calf pump, interesting enough, always came up as one of the brain gym to do with people with strokes. So calf pump, we're going to do the passive version, is useful to do to restore the natural length of the muscles. They're often frozen in response to an activated fear reflex. The calf pump will also assist in switching on the gaits and eventually help restore ease of walking. It also reactivates the frontal lobes of the brain because they're lengthening movement. So I had to come up with a version with them lying. So what we were doing was just pushing the foot back. So I don't want any participation from them because that changes the whole focus. I'll say to them, just let me do it. And I always call this one toes to nose and just hold and let go. you'll just need to build up gently. So just push, let go, push. So anything up to 5 times. If they look like they've had enough, well, I stop. You know, I listen to what they say. I watch them to see if I think they've had enough. Some will say, no, you can do few more, whatever. But it's certainly worth it to get them out of that freeze state, because calf pump is one of the corrections for an activated fear paralysis reflex. Another correction for an active fear paralysis reflex is also foot flex. So this one relaxes muscles in the calf and feet. And we know the calf muscle is one of the first parts of the body that respond to danger. So this posture withdrawal is a common physiological reaction to the activated fear paralysis and to stress and to overload. It's so useful to do if language is affected, because foot flex activates the language part of the brain. So with this one, we just gently bend their knee. Okay, do this as much as possible. I'm still gonna keep them in their comfort zone and just move the foot gently up and down. Now, I know from experience, if you're wanting to activate the language parts of the brain, you've got to eventually build up to 20, 30 seconds each side to achieve significant results. So it's one of the few brain gym I actually time for. There's not too many I do. But if they're showing distress, which they usually don't, I would stop. But knowing we're just building up that, but it's excellent in getting language switched on again, plus getting them out of that fear paralysis state. Now, surprisingly, and I was quite shocked when I first started testing for strokes, what used to come up all the time? Gravity glider. And I used to go, you've got to be joking. You've got to be joking. How on earth am I going to get this stroke patient to do gravity glider? Now, we know gravity glider promotes more comfortable sitting, but it also seems to reactivate. It seems to reorganize their system to make recovery easier. So what we discovered was even coming forward, the top half coming forward, was often enough to start triggering the system to reorganize itself better. So even at just a lean forward, but this man, Clive, I would never do gravity glider on my own. I would always get at least 2 other people to help. We'd been doing this a number of times with him, so he was well used to it. But this one took me by surprise, that how often it would come up, but it didn't have to be difficult. As long as there was some sort of movement forward in the top half, the body seemed to be happy and we were getting the desired results. Interesting, when I'm working in mental health area, anger management, hookups and gravity glider also feature a lot in calming someone's anger levels right down. Thinking caps, another easier one to do with people who have had strokes. We know thinking caps stimulate over 380 acupressure points in the ear, creating a feeling of liveliness, being awake and alert. Because it also works on getting the vestibular system switched on, it will also enhance thinking, listening ability, short-term memory, working memory and concentration. And they're usually quite happy for me to do the thinking caps on them, but they can do them themselves. If they've got speech issues as well as foot flex, I would include energy yawn as well. So people who had strokes often have problems with their speech. So we need to relax all the facial muscles. So we're going to work on the temporomandibular joint. So each time you talk, chew, swallow, every minute or so, you will move it. It's one of the most used joints of the body and can hold a lot of tension, especially if speech is affected. So doing energy yawn, and this one is a little bit trickier because if there's a lot of tension in there, it can be quite painful. So I'll always start very gently and say to the person, either tell me or just make put a hand up or something if you think no, I'm hurting too much. Just pull back. I'd rather keep them in their more comfort area than excuse me. I'd rather keep them in their comfort zone. But eventually they'll be able to use this one as well. So it will help with speech, eating again, singing. I debated whether to include singing, but I hear so many ladies tell me they miss singing so much after they've had their stroke, and it's certainly one connected to vision as well. Double doodles or double drawing, bilateral drawing. This one is just under cross crawl, is vital in regaining competent brain function to establish directionality, orientation in space relative to the midline of the body. It improves hand-eye coordination, leading to improved eating abilities. So this one's fairly easy to do. I always find out their favorite music, put it on, and I just gently take their hands and move them in this bilateral fashion. So up to down is the same, but in and out is opposite. So they don't even realise we're often doing some very valuable brain gym if we're jiving to the music. But eventually aim to do double doodles on a surface or drawing on paper. Every attempt, no matter how small, is worth the effort. If I'm working with acquired brain injury, this is, it's on a par with cross crawl. It really is, in getting both sides of the brain switched on and working again. So it will need to be included and built up over a longer period of time. So whether you're guiding the person's hand or we usually put a big black line down the middle of the paper, tape the paper to the table, and off they go. Doesn't matter how long it takes. I just thought I'd throw some resources in that I use. You have these wonderful chart or pages you can get there, sort of plastic. You get the pen and the child just traces over them. You can rub them out and you just keep reusing them. These are ones that I've just got in. These are wooden ones, and they can actually feel that if they can't work out how to double doodle, they've just got to trace with these. I've got them of all varying levels. But interesting, Temu's got quite a lot of excellent brain gym resources at a very reasonable price. Receptive owl, and this can pair with thinking caps. So the owl will lengthen, relax muscles in the shoulders and neck. Often they've had a stroke, those muscles tighten up and they've got reduced head turning ability. So we need to do the owl to switch on hearing, listening, auditory processing, listening comprehension, thinking and memory. So if you can squeeze, not hurting, but squeeze the person's shoulders, and if they can just start moving their head. I always find the comfortable range they can move in. After a few sessions, I'll just say to them, can you just go a tiny bit further? The other side, a tiny bit further. So this one, again, you build up over time as well, but it's well worth it. Now, another one that surprised me, along with Gravity Glider, was the rocker. Kept coming up as a correction. There's their learning menu. And I thought, how on earth am I going to do the rocker with people that have had strokes? And I finally realised they wanted a sitting version of it. So the rocker releases lower back and sacrum muscles by massaging the hamstring and gluteus muscle groups. This allows for the flow of cerebral spinal fluid to the brain, improving the ability to focus, concentrate, and comprehend. when the hips and lower back are relaxed, sitting's more centered and comfortable. So what I get them to do is sit on the front half of the chair. Please make sure it's a chair with sides. Lean back and rock side to side. And for the people that have had strokes, Parkinson's, this is the favorite one of Parkinson's people, acquired brain injury. This seems to be sufficient to start waking up those muscles and getting the spinal fluid pumped up to cool and nourish the brain the way it should. So I'm not surprised anymore when this one comes up, but we offer them the sitting version if that's possible. If a brain gym comes up and it's just not physically possible, if I haven't got any help, or I will just just quietly muscle test myself, is there something else we can substitute for that particular brain gym? Balance buttons. Now, this helps restore sense of balance and body organisation by stimulating the body's balance system, the vestibular, in the inner ear. So it helps restore sense of equilibrium, relaxes eyes and rest the body, and frees attention for easier thought and actions. And interesting enough, also improving the ability to make decisions, which is a big factor in people who've had strokes. It's also useful to do before standing up. So hand on navel and fingers behind the ear. So I'd do at least 20 seconds one way, 20 seconds the other. If I'm doing this on somebody, they can hold their own belly button, and I'm going to hold their balance buttons for them. So when they do, if they are attempting to stand up, they don't have to after balance buttons, but if they want to, their sense of balance is already switched on. Now, for a lot of them, doing this swap over can be difficult. So putting a Band-Aid on their belly button, all it's doing is bringing the body's attention to the navel, just like you would do when you put your hand on the navel. So, but it also frees up the hands to hold their balance button points. So they seem to like this one. And I also know, being a reflex person, if you do balance buttons, because it calms the vestibular, that then calms a lot of the retained reflexes. So this is a quick way to calm a lot of the retained reflexes, whether you're standing up or not. Just do balance buttons. Keeping a Band-Aid on the navel will keep the reflexes happy in a lot of people. It's interesting, if you get motion sickness, put a Band-Aid on your belly button. And if you do start feeling sick, just start holding balance button points. Just watching the time, Kate. Okay, accurate earth button points.
Yeah, we have.
Whether you're holding them or they are, these increase stability, grounding, organisation. If you know normal kinesiology, it also switches on the central meridian, which is often switched off after a stroke. So whoever's holding the earth button points, it still work. Same with space button points. And also that switches on governing meridian, but space buttons covers the spinal column, back, the brain area. So it often comes up as a correction for strokes. Interesting, the combination is one they seem to like. And this is the one off the brain gym CD. Hand on navel, top, bottom lip. They can rub, they can hold. Generally, we just rub to hold. Children like to rub, but doesn't matter. So this is another one that comes up a lot. So it doesn't matter who's holding it. It'll work. Lazy eights for eyes. So we've got to get the eyes working together again. So again, it gets something they like to look at. Remember, it's always up and around, and do your best. You may not even get one done the first time. It's worth persisting. So have them look at something they like to look at. Interesting. Holding navel and tailbone often comes up because it's this perception of front and back, which is often switched off after a stroke, and which confuses the brain and body. So this assists in focus, restoring sensory integration and feelings of safety. So this one can come up in the early days of when you're working with strokes. Holding the K1 point on the foot. This is your kidney 1 point. This is magic in calming any fear reflex, helping reduce anxiety, stress, improves concentration. It takes no active participation from them, and I can do it for minutes and they're still happy for me to do it. And some of them will tell me their feet tingle. Occasionally I hear the children, especially the autistic children, tell me their teeth are tingling.
Yep.
Okay. Can I just do a couple, Kate? I'm nearly
That's
finished.
okay. I think everyone's happy to continue. That is the 30 minutes, but if
Yeah.
you
Okay, I think I'm almost
wish
there.
to leave, but
Okay.
love goes with you.
Okay, gate points. These are points that you rub on the foot. So use their finger to get the distance down from the toes, and it's in between the toes. But these are great in getting the feet switched back on again. So these come up a bit, especially when they're about to get up again. Walk, it switches on your feet for walking, takes stress out. And if you can manage it, repatterning. Anything of a repatterning, just build up slowly. Very slowly. Obviously, we start lying down. We're not going to start them standing up. But that's well worth having a go at, even just picking
Yeah.
them,
If
looking in
you're
different
not muted,
directions.
could you
It's
please
well worth
mute?
it. And this is the last one anyway. So don't forget about looking at an X. So have an X around them. I print them in different colours. I often muscle test what colour though. I get them choose the colour, and I'll print them at home and laminate them and bring them back to them so they can see them. So I hope I've given you some ideas to work with strokes. It certainly was challenging to start with, but it was well worth seeing the results with people.
Wow. Thank you, Miss Claire. I will see if I can shut the recording off. Everyone cross their fingers.
Is there any questions? I can't see the chat from here.